Let's just lay the groundwork of UCLA, but really broadly and only really the story as it begins in Westwood.
Okay.
So they existed. UCLA existed since 1882, but 1927 was the year that the Los Angeles Branch State Normal School moved to the area, or as they became known in 1919, the Southern Branch of the University of California, or as they became known the year that they moved, 1927, University of California at Los Angeles. It wasn't until 1958 they actually became known as University of California, Los Angeles, or UCLA. So that wasn't until 1958. But anyway, the Westwood campus was known as the Beverly site in the planning stages. And the first 4 buildings they put there were Royce Hall, the college library, now known as Powell Library,
right,
the chemistry building, now known as Haynes Hall, and the physics biology building, now known as Kaplan Hall.
Okay.
So all these buildings being together in that top part of the campus, like where that big lawn. Yeah. But at the time, that was it. That was the entire campus, was just that area.
Okay.
And this brings me to my first segment, Step Up to the Screech. There's a lot of these.
I no doubt. I told you we can record a couple hours earlier today, and you're like, I'm still typing, and I would guarantee that most of your week was coming up with these, and then you're like, oh, I better research something.
All the hard research was there, and then I had like blank spots I needed to fill in. Insert funny thing here. Make them laugh here, Daniel. So this land is your land, but it's also my land. After being taken from the Quiche, this land by the Spanish, and then it was taken by Mexico, was given in 1843 to a guy named Maximo Alanis. A last-minute decision to give it to him instead of Morissette Alanis. That took 4 hours.
Isn't that ironic?
I wish I knew another song of hers.
I know.
Isn't that a jagged little pill to swallow? Ooh. So this guy named the area here Maximo Alanis. He named it Rancho San Jose de Buenos Aires. That's what this place was called. When he died, it became the property of the second mayor of Los Angeles, who wasn't a horse, Benjamin Davis Wilson. He might have been a horse. I've never seen a picture of him. Who then sold it to our old pal, William Wolfskill, who was not a wolf. He was a citrus farmer who renamed it Wolfskill Ranch and then sold it to Arthur Letts Sr., which is not a sentence, who was the founder of both the Broadway and Bullock's department stores.
Oh, wow.
Who then, when he died, went to his son-in-law, Harold Yantz. And this is where things start to get weird.
Okay.
So Harold and his brother Edwin owned a development company named Yantz Investment Company, and they sold the land to UCLA for their new campus that they were building. But it seemed like they were also hired to plan out the campus. So they were actually the ones who developed Westwood. Was this this company.
So this is kind of like the lower area.
No, this is the higher area.
This is the higher
area. Where you
I thought you were talking the higher area was already there. Now we're talking about the lower area.
Royce Hall.
Powell Library.
So this is
the upper area.
The upper area with the big lawn where Royce Hall is. That's the area we're talking about. But later on they developed the south, I guess you could call it the South Campus, which is just Westwood.
It's just Westwood. Okay.
So
yeah, why was I confused? You're an idiot.
I can tell you why you're confused. So the legend goes that Harold and Edwin were something of a Cain and Abel and disagreed about how the campus of UCLA should look. Mm-hmm. Harold wanted to keep its natural hilly beauty. Edwin wanted a big grand staircase to welcome people into the campus like the schools on the East Coast had. They couldn't agree, and neither would compromise. So when Harold went on a trip out of the country, Edwin just went and built the staircase that's now there in that big lawn area that you walk up.
Am I my brother's sibling? So the big long staircase from the upper to the lower is that staircase.
That's the Yantz staircase.
I have a video of my dog running down the stairs.
Oh, your dog is cursed.
I hate to inform you.
Yeah.
He's going to get diarrhea.
They were called the Yantz Steps, like I said, but they seem to have changed the name in 2020 to the Tongva Steps, but I'm not sure if that's official.
Oh, okay.
And they also seem to have changed it again, so I'm not really sure. So, but the problem was, Edwin built these steps against his brother's will, but Edwin was dying, and he knew that the second he died, his brother's just going to tear these steps up. Right. So again, as the legend goes, before he died, Edwin put in his will that he must be buried under the 6th step of these stairs, and that way his brother legally would not be allowed to tear them up because that would be desecrating a grave.
Wow.
So allegedly, Edwin Yantz is buried under the 6th step of this staircase, which is why students believe that the 6th step is cursed, and if you step on it, you're doomed to graduate a quarter late. So
Wow.
I hate to tell you, but you're going to have to pay for another quarter of tuition for
I'm
Ringo.
so sorry. That's $9 million.
Yeah. The curse is really on your parents. Yeah, that's
okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
I want to be that spiteful. I don't have the energy
Yeah.
or the tenacity, but I want to be like that.
When I die, I have it in my will that I'm going to be buried attached to this microphone, and you are also attached to the other side of the recording thing.
Come on, I'm going first. Come on.
Who are we kidding?
Who are we kidding?
Who are we kidding? Any curse you put on me will be doubled because I will already have cursed you. Okay, so also in 1989, Edwin Yonts Jr. jumped off of a building in Santa Monica to his death. So that's the Yonts
Really?
story.
What year?
1989. This was much later.
Wow.
But there was another aspect of this early campus that has led to some other modern day weirdness. And my next segment, Tunnel of Shove. A lot of these I wrote and I was like, is this scary?
It's scary that my brain came up with it.
Yeah,
it's probably a red flag.
My doctor thinks it's scary. Okay, so before any of these early buildings were built, the very first structure built on the Westwood UCLA campus was something called the Arroyo Bridge.
Okay.
As we know, UCLA is a nightmare of hills, and that big quad area that we've been talking about used to have a giant gulch in the middle of it.
Okay.
Something of a Gower Gulch.
Sure.
It was a dip so deep that a bridge was needed to connect the two sides. Like that's how much space there was here.
Okay.
The Arroyo Bridge did this by connecting the area that is now around Murphy Hall on the east to where the flag is at the end of the street that's now called Dixon Court. It was a pretty significant bridge from the pictures I saw, and it was really tall. It was so big that during World War II, they stored enough emergency food for 50,000 people under the bridge in case the city was bombed.
Wow.
It got eaten by a troll, unfortunately. And then the troll stepped on the sixth step and was like, oh, I got to go to troll school again. So by the late 40s, though, the school needed more land for the growing campus. So in December of 1947, the land around it was filled in, but that road, Dixon Court, is actually the top of that bridge.
Okay.
So you're still driving on the bridge if you drive on that street, which is why there's signs on it saying bridge, weight limit 5 tons on this what looks
street.
like a street.
Yeah.
Because on the land on either side is essentially hollow and it would all collapse if a giant truck were to go there.
Oh my God.
So that's really weird that's just the top of a 100-year-old bridge.
Weird.
But this leads into the underground of UCLA. So connecting to this now underground bridge is 6 miles of secret but not so secret tunnels stretching from around Murphy Hall to Royce Hall and then all the way down to the hospital with detours along the way.
Okay.
There's 6 miles of tunnels underneath UCLA. They're 3 stories below ground and are mostly kind of steam and electrical tunnels, which is why they're often extremely hot and dangerous, but they connect to some weird areas beneath some of the buildings.
Okay.
Under McGowan Hall, there's a storage area for all the old theater props. So you go down and there's like
wigs and
Groucho glasses.
Yeah. Bunch of skulls so somebody could play Hamlet.
Yeah. But which one's real? This is what my nightmare I was telling you about was I saw an old breakaway sugar glass bottle. Melissa, wake me up. Was it about the sugar glass bottle again?
You need to see somebody.
You need to ask the government for money for what they did to you for making you dream about that sugar glass bottle. So there's something down there in these tunnels called the toilet graveyard. I don't know what that is. I don't know if like you go toilet in a big pit or if it's just like a pit filled with old toilets. Either way,
I have no business being down there.
There's an area under the library that has a bunch of old Dewey Decimal filing drawers and typewriters. There's also supposedly a ghost in that room. I could not find any more information about it. Mm-hmm. These tunnels are technically off limits to students, but kids have found ways to get down there and do college kid stuff for decades with some graffiti dating back to the 40s.
Wow.
They're also allegedly used for initiation rituals for the Order of the Golden Bear, which is a secret society of sorts on the UCLA campus. They've also been used to shuttle high-profile or controversial guests that give speeches at the campus, like Hillary Clinton or George Lincoln Rockwell, who was the head of the American Nazi Party in 1967. What's the difference? Am I right? Lock her up. It feels good to say that again. Now that we're getting close to the 2024 election, it feels so good to still want to lock her up.
Yeah, and it also makes as much sense as it did before. It just still makes so much sense.
Even more. History has proven us right that someone should lock her up. But some of these weird offshoots of the tunnels kind of go nowhere and their purpose has been lost to time. Some are believed to even have been built in the early 1900s before UCLA even moved here.
Oh,
like
weird.
they connected to like the the VA, like across
Oh,
the 405.
right. Yeah.
A lot of them were sealed off before the 1984 Olympics for security purposes, and entry got even harder when COVID hit. But there are still ways, and poking around on the internet will tell you how to get down there. But I'm not going anywhere near a place that has a toilet graveyard.
No, yeah.
I don't want to die in a toilet graveyard.
You're like toilet graveyard, but then there's a
It
parenthesis
doesn't
that says public toilet graveyard. You're like, no,
It's a trough. No. But
it's
now
a pooping trough.
they were experimenting with the world's first communal poop hole. But now let's follow some roots of a tree growing out of these tunnels back to the surface in a story I'll call Hot Potato, Hot Potato. Oh God, why is my skin melting off? It's so hot potato.
Good. This is good.
That one was pretty scary, right? 4 hours for that
4
one.
hours.
There are 2 trees outside of Moore Hall that people call the potato trees.
Okay.
These are 2 trees that have these giant potato-like tubers growing off of them. And the legend is that during the Cold War, they were doing experiments at UCLA to find out ways to grow food during a nuclear winter.
Oh my God.
They were experimenting on some potatoes, and as a joke, one of the students took a few of them and planted them outside Moore Hall, and these 2 trees grew out of them. That's the legend. In reality, they're called Kigelia pinnata, aka sausage trees from Africa, but I like the story.
I like the story.
There's a handful of other small legends like that one scattered around the campus. One is that a secretary in Murphy Hall saw blood coming out of a fountain in the basement and then died. There's one that the film program's Soundstage 3 is haunted with lights going on and off and things getting knocked over. Then there's a story that happened off campus. But on September 10th, 1981, 19-year-old Gregory L. Griffin broke into the Laurel Canyon home of UCLA Dean Philip Franson to rob the place and ended up killing him. The weird thing here is that the street that this took place on was Wonderland Avenue, the same block as the Wonderland murders happened on.
Really?
But now, into my segments where things start to get a little bit rough.
Okay.
This next one I'll call It's Really Sad and I'm Not Making a Joke title about it.
I'm proud of you. I'm so proud
off
of
the
you.
air, I'll text you what I wrote.
Yeah, I'll hit you something nasty.
Yeah. I'll tell it to you in hieroglyphics so that we can't be traced. I'll send it to you in candy boxes from the Egyptian theater. You'll get it. So now we're heading over to Boelter Hall.
Okay.
Built in 1959 to house math and science programs. This building housed one of the most important events in modern history when on October 29th, 1969, in room 3420, the first message ever was sent over ARPANET, which is considered to be the moment that the internet was born, happened in Boelter Hall at UCLA.
Okay.
But less pleasant, things happened here over the years.
Okay.
In May 2013, a 47-year-old library employee named Reynaldo Quintos jumped off the roof of the building to his death. In May 2016, Mainak Sarkar, a student from the UCLA doctorate program living in Minnesota, had been harboring some grudge against some of his old professors and for some reason snapped. He killed his ex-wife and then drove all the way from Minnesota to UCLA to Boelter Hall, where he stormed in and shot and killed his old professor, William Klug.
Wow.
He attempted to find a second professor he was angry with, but he wasn't there that day, so Sarkar killed himself instead. His death note asked someone to please check on his cat. I regret nothing. Please feed my cat.
Please feed my cat.
Yeah, don't touch his stomach. He might bite you.
He won't like that.
Then a few months later, in October 2016, another person, this time a 20-year-old student, jumped off the roof of Boelter Hall to his death as well. So that's what Boelter Hall, a lot of people have jumped off the roof. I'll call. 1 bedroom, scared bath down the hall.
What's the scare supposed to be?
Shared. Like a shared bathroom.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah. I was
Is your
wondering.
arm okay?
What?
Is your arm okay? That was a really hard stretch you made. I just want to make sure that you didn't pull anything.
I was wondering, like, is Greg going to get this, or has he lived such a privileged life? He's never had to scare a bathroom before down the hall. But us common people are yucking it up right now. We're laughing in our pigsties as you.
I'm one of 3 brothers. I scared everything in my life.
I'm wearing a I'm wearing a severed hand-me-down right now from my brother who's 40 something. So several of the dorms around campus have ghost stories.
Okay.
Gardenia Hall has a reputation of noises in the middle of the night that aren't just students doing that famous experimenting I've heard so much about. One night in particular, several people in Gardenia Hall saw a tall, dark, presumably handsome, and shadowy figure walking down the hallway with spectral flow.
Okay.
Which strive to have spectral flow.
I just want to, with that vibe.
Yeah, I just want that aura about me, that spectral aura.
Flow.
But the one building with the maybe worst reputation, I'm going to say definitely the worst reputation, is Dijkstra Hall. Dijkstra, named after Clarence A. Dijkstra, who wanted to turn UCLA from a commuter campus to a place that students lived and thrived. So in his time, people would just drive over to campus and, as he called them, their private jalopies.
Cool.
And then they would leave after class.
Who's the main stuffy guy in Beverly Hillbillies? Is it like a bank owner or something?
When I think of jalop, when you think jalopy, think Jughead from the Archie comics.
I'm begging you.
Please. And this holiday season, think of Jughead.
Think of Jughead and the other Riverdale gang, please.
Yeah, I mean, what a slam.
Yeah.
To describe every student at UCLA as a jalopy driver.
Yeah.
Which is where that slur came from. That's why everyone from USC calls everyone at UCLA a jalopy driver.
That's the time-honored tradition, calling people.
So to fix this, Dijkstra pushed for a building that would eventually become Dijkstra Hall. Opening in 1959, it was the first dorm on the hill of UCLA. It has 10 stories and could fit 900 students. It was meant to be a self-contained community that would be the center of student life. But it wasn't all experimenting in the middle of the night here. I've heard so much about. In April 1996, what a transition here. In April 1996, a student hanged themselves in their room.
Oh my God.
This happened again in November 2004. But the biggest story to come out of Dijkstra Hall is one of the big cold cases of LA history, that of Michael Negrete. Have you heard? Some of you have heard this one.
I haven't heard Michael Negrete before.
Okay, good. So I don't have to stop. Negrete was a freshman in the music program at UCLA living in Dijkstra Hall on the 6th floor. On December 10th, 1999, he was at a party in another room in the building, and sometime after midnight, he went back to his dorm to play a computer game with a friend in a different room in the building via intranet.
Okay.
Not ARPANET. I don't know what game this would have been in 1999. Maybe like some sort of sample of a Star Wars Episode 1.
It's a demo.
A demo of the Phantom Menace, of Jar Jar's Big Adventure that he got in a cereal box.
Yeah. It's a demo from a magazine.
He was playing 300 free hours of AOL. So he's playing on his computer. At 3:40 a.m., he logged off his computer. He went out into the hallway to give a high five to the guy he had been playing with. They both went their separate ways back to their own rooms, and that was the last anyone ever saw of Michael Negrete.
Jeez.
He never made it back to his room. His wallet was still there. His keys, his jacket, even his shoes were still in his room. There was no physical evidence of violence, no sign of a struggle, no clues, no hints, no suspects. He had no past of mental illness, no drug use, no enemies, no secret life. In the search, a bloodhound followed his scent to a bus stop on the other side of campus, but that made so little sense that even that was dismissed as the dog just kind of got confused.
Why would it be dismissed?
Because it made so little sense, and there was no evidence that he was actually there. Like, if he had no money and no shoes, like how they just figured, like, well, dogs aren't. I know that Ringo is perfect, but most dogs aren't perfect.
Makes sense, though. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
But where would he go? Where would he go? Where would he have gone? There was no sign of him even leaving the building.
Okay.
Like, it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Michael Negrete seemed to have simply vanished into thin air inside Dijkstra Hall.
That's crazy.
But now this is still a cold case. Nobody knows what happened to him. But now, this takes us to the part of the underbelly of UCLA that I'm most excited to get to, and I'll call this one A Rolling Bone Gathers No Moss. This here.
Do you ever double pun a word, like skeleton instead of skeleton? Do you ever do that?
I've gone as far as a quadruple pun, but I flew so close to the
Sicarus.
The pun up. I flew too close to the pun.
That's funny. Yeah, no, it's good.
And I kind of started hallucinating when I passed out, and Melissa dumped a bunch of water on me.
Yeah,
I saw God though when it happened. So this here is a story I was not aware of, which is insulting that nobody told me about this. And I don't know if you know about this. It is that of Dr. Thelma Moss and the parapsychology lab of UCLA.
I don't know about this.
Okay, great. Perfect.
Okay.
I'm really excited because this is like I said, I went into this unknowing, like, what am I going to find in the bowels of UCLA? And this is like a huge story.
Okay.
It starts with a woman born Thelma Schnee. Also, Thelma Moss, A Rolling Bone Gathers No Moss.
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's all what you did.
I just wanted to make sure because I need your validation. and I won't be validating your parking.
I also refuse to be validated by you, but I need it, but I refuse to.
So it starts with a woman born Thelma Schnee, born on the blemishless day of January 6th, 1918, though.
Oh, a different thing happened. A different storm happened that day.
Yeah. It was a dark and stormy capital. So next we know of her, she graduated in 1939 from Carnegie Tech in Pittsburgh with a degree in drama. With this, she got into acting and became one of the founding members of the Actors Studio in New York City.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And from there, she got into writing movies. She wrote some sci-fi TV stuff in a sci-fi movie, but her biggest claim to fame in Hollywood was writing a movie in 1954 called Father Brown, that's now known as The Detective, but it was starring the man who knows what is and isn't a moon himself, Alec Guinness.
Okay.
So she wrote a movie starring Alec Guinness, and this is when things start getting very, very weird.
Okay.
It's because of Alec Guinness on one night in particular that her life changed forever. September 23rd, 1955. She was going to have dinner with Alec Guinness at a place called Villa Capri in Hollywood on McAdden, right by the Egyptian Theater.
Okay.
But the place was totally packed, so they turned away and left. Like you did. They went to the Star Wars Cantina instead, which he had no idea what that was at the time, but he would know pretty well.
Very confused.
He's not really welcome there anymore. He caused a little bit of a ruckus.
One guy didn't like him, and his friend didn't like him either. Those two guys, they had death sentence on 12 systems.
Also, LAPD has never found them. So as they're walking down the street to find somewhere else to eat, the Scientology building, cafeteria at the Scientology building, someone comes running out of the restaurant after them. They turn around. It's James Dean. He was a big fan of Alec Guinness, and I'm sure didn't care at all who Thelma Schnee was. So he invited them to join him at his table. So they're walking back to the restaurant. Wouldn't you know it? They pass this brand new sports car in the parking lot.
The Spider.
And James Dean says, hey, check this out. It's my brand new car. And he's saying, oh, it can go 150 miles per hour. It's great. For whatever reason, Alec Guinness says to him, something compels him. And he says to this man he's never met before, please do not get into that car, because if you do, it's now Friday, 10 o'clock at night. By 10 o'clock at night next Friday, you'll be dead if you get in that car.
What?
I have no idea how anyone reacted to this other than Alec Guinness, who apologized for being so forward while being British.
So Alec Guinness said this to James Dean.
Alec Guinness said this to James Dean, never met before.
But it was famous.
Both of them famous.
Both of them famous, yeah.
He says this to him. What compelled Alec Guinness to say this? Who knows? So,
yeah.
But the Friday after this, September 30th,
oh my God,
James Dean died crashing that car at 5:45 p.m.
Wow.
The weirdness of what compelled Alec Guinness to say that, and for that to then happen to James Dean, never left Thelma for the rest of her life.
Right.
She couldn't understand why that happened.
Yeah.
So not long after this, Thelma married a producer named Paul F. Moss, becoming Thelma Moss.
Sure.
And she got pregnant, but Paul died shortly after their daughter was born, which drove Moss into a deep depression, which caused her to attempt to take her own life twice.
Okay.
Therapy and medication wasn't helping, so in 1957, she tried an experimental new treatment people were trying, LSD.
No, not if you're not doing well. Okay.
So this actually helped her, and she decided she was wasting her time writing movies for Alec Guinness, and decided to go that old sorcerer, and decided to go back to school and got her doctorate in psychology.
Okay. That old wizard?
That old wizard.
Yeah.
I knew your father. He was a great pod racer. In 1962, don't get into that pod racer.
Are you having a stroke?
I swear to you, do not get into this pod racer, James Dean.
It could do the parcel. No, it could do the
make the Kessel Run.
In 12 parsecs.
And then Sebulba came and challenged him. I'll race you up to Northern California. It was crazy.
We'll take the 5.
Chuba. So in 1962, she also, and that was the game that Michael Legret was playing. He was playing James Dean Pod Races Sepulpa. So in 1962, she also wrote a book about her depression and how LSD therapy saved her, called Myself and I, under the pen name of Constance A. Newland.
Okay.
Why? I don't know. With her new degree, she became a champion of alternative treatment like LSD and microdosing, essentially. This was what she was advocating for, and became even more vocal about its benefits than the other guy shouting about how great it was at the time, Timothy Leary. Mm-hmm. So they were what'd you say? Contemporaries.
Yeah, contemporaries. But they're not opposing forces. They're both agreeing to the same thing.
Yeah, but one agreed more. And one was cool.
One hung out with Neil Cassidy, so we know who this is.
But her expertise in psychology got her a tangible job in 1966 teaching medical psychology right here at UCLA in their Neuropsychiatric Institute. So she was teaching like a normal professor would there, but the Alec Guinness incident compounded by multiple treatments of LSD was always in her head.
Yeah.
And she started to focus more and more on non-traditional studies.
Okay.
As she put it, she wanted to understand how information is received, why dolphins separated by thousands of miles will gather together in an area near Hawaii, why the swallows return to Capistrano, which we know now is just because there was a tall building. Now they gather at the Sweet James billboard a few miles south.
Right.
Why a mother awakens in the middle of the night with fear that her son has been in an automobile accident and then the phone rings. How does all this happen? This is what she wanted to understand. She didn't feel that she had any psychic powers or anything like that, but she believed that thought was a tangible energy and she wanted to prove it.
Okay.
To do this, she started a secret, not so secret lab devoted to studying paranormal phenomena by use of the scientific method. This is what she wanted. She wanted to scientifically prove, like you were saying, you can't prove ghosts exist. This is what she wanted to prove.
She wanted to prove that thought was tangible energy, right?
She wanted to prove that that thought was an energy. Psychic powers exist. Like she wanted to have scientific proof that this was possible.
Secret carpool lane to all knowledge.
Yes. She wanted, and other LSD thoughts. Yes. And other thoughts addled by LSD. Sure.
And other high people thoughts. Sure.
She was going to prove that the paranormal existed. This was not approved of by UCLA, and this was not funded by UCLA. And it's also not something they like to talk about these days, but it happened in an office right by the hospital at UCLA.
Okay.
She gathered a crew of students who were also interested in this sort of thing and began contacting people around LA who claimed to have abilities.
They make shows about this sort of thing.
I'll tell you what they made because of this sort of thing later. They would analyze the effects of hypnosis, claims of clairvoyance, and telekinesis. Thelma Moss was actually the person who came up with the technique of depriving people of their senses in order to strengthen their physical senses, which is what you see.
Sensory deprivation.
Which is what you see in literally every movie about psychic powers now. She was the one who came up with this idea. An idea that is scientifically sound.
And super sexy.
She would also give people a lot of drugs.
Okay.
Then in 1970, she went to the USSR to study a technique that she became locally renowned for, which is called Kirlian photography. Do you know what this is?
No, I don't think I do.
I did. I thought this was like those pictures people took in like the 1910s where you see like ectoplasm shooting out of their nose.
Oh, right. Someone hanging from the back of the room or whatever.
Right. Yeah. But this is a little... It's basically that, but it's a little bit different.
Okay.
So Kirlian photography was developed in 1937 by an Armenian man named Semen Davidovich Kirlian and his wife Valentina. So Semen was an electrician who noticed that when he photographed things with electricity pulsating through them, they would show lights and rays shooting off of them, or in other words, an aura.
Okay.
So the method was you would put your hand on a big sheet of film and then you would have a small electrical current pulse through your body as the film was exposed and the auras shooting off your hand would be analyzed. So the claim was that this would indicate and tell you things about your physical and emotional state.
Okay.
And also you would be electrocuted.
And you would also get a small electrical shock.
For a reward for your efforts, you will be electrocuted. So Moss firmly believed that Kirlian photography produced effects, but she didn't know what they meant, which is why she brought it back to UCLA and focused on it heavily.
Okay.
Almost every other scientist at the time thought it was absolute nonsense and that all they were seeing was just corona discharges from the electricity. But in either case, she seems to have been awarded something called the Douglas Dean Award from the United Nations for her peaceful collaboration with scientists from the USSR, even though it was complete nonsense.
Douglas Dean. No relation.
Dean of UCLA?
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
James Dean of UCLA.
Yeah.
Oh, Chuba. Take that one to Watto's shop. You could get a coin for that. So now she's back at UCLA and experimenting heavily with Kirlian photography. And what she found was actually pretty weird. So she found that the auras did change depending on what you were looking at.
Okay.
She had one guy do it and then made him get drunk and did it again. And it was different. And as he continued to train, the drunker he got.
Yeah.
She did it. What?
I have a question that you don't probably have an answer to, which
does alcohol make you conduct electricity?
Yeah. Let's try it right now. I'm gonna jump in your tub. Just throw a bunch of toasters in.
Yeah. I'm gonna drink all this vodka and jump in the bathtub. Let's see what happens.
LSD and alcohol don't have the same effect on your brain.
I have
Why
no
would
idea.
you think that drinking and then doing this would, I don't, okay, go ahead.
Well,
You don't have the answer.
I mean, it's what do you mean exactly?
I just don't understand. She's a proponent for LSD.
She's not, the drinking wasn't part of the treatment. It was just to see, like, how does your mental state changing affect what we're seeing on these photographs?
Okay.
Like, if you are within your senses,
Sure.
if you're losing your inhibition, like, what does that look like?
Okay. Just not mental state. I was wondering if.
No, I mean, I'm sure they did it also with giving people LSD, but
Yeah.
it was just to see, like, how does your mental state change in these photographs?
Okay.
Also, complete nonsense.
Not yet, gibberish.
She did, okay, these next ones are weird. She did it on a leaf, and then she gave the leaf LSD. It was a marijuana leaf. It made it smoke itself.
Yeah. She made a little drink for the
It was really cute.
Yeah.
You could see it on TikTok. There's a whole TikTok devoted to little drinks for leaves. So she did it on a leaf and then cut off a section of the leaf. And in the pictures, the aura would fill in and replicate the missing section of the leaf.
Wow.
So it would recreate what was missing. Then she tried it, you're going to love this, on a couple of rat tails.
Cool.
Live rats. Would you prefer a live rat or just the tail?
Not even the mention is what I like.
So, rat tails. Woohoo. One with cancer and one without. The rat without cancer had a normal, colorful aura because rats are beautiful, but the one with cancers was dull and fading.
Wow.
So they looked different. Then she tried it on a person who had a broken finger. And what she saw was not only that the auras of the two fingers were different, the healthy one and the broken one, but the aura from the healthy finger was actually moving towards the broken finger as if to heal the broken finger.
Weird.
So this led Moss to theorize that maybe, just maybe, Kirlian photography could be used to diagnose cancer, but even more enticingly, that maybe there is a way to understand this energy to a point that it could actually be used to cure diseases.
Okay.
This is like this. These were the early steps of what she was hoping to achieve.
Sure.
It was supposed discoveries like these and her theories about things like that good rapport among strangers could possibly be ESP at work that gave her and her lab a reputation around town that led to people contacting them for help with their paranormal problems. So word got out to the general public. And yes, even celebrities. They're just like us. They have paranormal problems too.
Yeah. They shop for milk. They have paranormal problems.
They shop for ectoplasm just like the rest of us. Most of the celebrities that came to her did so anonymously, but there's a couple stories that we do know about. One is of the wife of character actor Albert Salmi, who I have to keep saying is not salami.
Yeah.
Who this guy was in tons of TV shows from the 60s to the 80s, including Lost in Space. He was in 3 episodes of The Twilight Zone and also Caddyshack.
Okay. I'm going to look him up while you talk.
Yeah, you'll probably recognize him from his Twilight Zone episodes. I think he's like the rich old man from that one where like all the family's fighting over his estate or something before he dies.
Okay. Yeah, I do recognize this guy.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
Sex symbol if I've ever seen one.
Salami? Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Boy, oh boy. They don't call him Albert Salami for no reason. So she came into the lab, and whatever reading on her they did, she was warned about her husband.
Okay.
Like there's something bad going
Yeah.
on. She ignored this. 2 decades later, her husband murdered her and then killed himself.
Jesus.
On a lighter note, Carol Burnett came in and they did Kirlian photography for each of her different characters, and each one showed wildly different auras,
Really?
like depending on which character she was doing. If I knew a single one of her characters, I would reference it right now. And then came in William Friedkin and William Peter Blatty, the director and writer of The Exorcist.
Jesus.
They came to the lab for research for The Exorcist, and were told to bring in something that had deep personal meaning. Blatty brought this medal that his dead mother had given to him. So in the lab with them, they had an LAPD officer who arrested them immediately. This This officer had shown signs of psychometry, which is the ability to know things about a person or event by touching something related to that person or event. So like what I saw Ahsoka do in the TV show. So Blatty, which Alec Guinness also warned about, don't get in this show. Or in 6 episodes, people will lose interest. So Blatty gave this cop the medal, and then he said, "What medal?" And he described. So this guy touches the medal. This guy who supposedly can see things by touching things.
Yeah.
So he touches it, and he describes to him a white house with a white fence next to some train tracks and a black and white dog.
The cop describes that from the medal.
From touching the medal, he describes this to William Peter Blatty, writer of The Exorcist. This meant absolutely nothing to William Peter Blatty.
Right.
Weeks later, Blatty was with his older sister, and he told her about it, and she said that's exactly what the house they lived in Lebanon looked like before he had been born.
Wow. Really?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
Very, very strange.
Very strange.
And The Exorcist wasn't the only movie Thelma Moss had. That would have been a good title, Thelma Loss. Thelma Moss had an impact on. She also later helped advise on both Poltergeist and Ghost. And also, supposedly, her lab was the inspiration for Dan Aykroyd to come up with the idea for Ghostbusters.
I was several times when you were talking about electrical shock.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the Ghostbusters.
Right. Yeah, they actually had this car that they would drive around in. It said Kirlian 1 on the back. So she also wrote a couple more books about her studies, The Probability of the Impossible in 1974 and The Body Electric in 1979. But Moss and the disciples in her lab didn't only focus on mental phenomenon. They would also investigate the occasional haunted house, which brings us to my scariest segment, which I'll call... even I know this one's stupid. Ding dong, grave on calling.
Oh my. You typed that, I'm sure, as a placeholder.
And that was a second draft. I think it was originally in grave on calling, and I was like, why gild the lily?
They're not going to let you join the WGA because of that.
I know.
They're going to
go back on strike. Don't let him keep doing this. Let AI do it instead. Okay, so this is the scariest and weirdest part of all of this.
Related to Moss?
This is part of Moss's lab.
Okay.
So 2 students in her lab were named Barry Taff and Carrie Gaynor. I don't know that much about Gaynor, but Taff was in his mid-20s with a degree in physiological psychology and was considered to have psychic abilities.
Okay.
He would bring to the lab sensitives he would meet around town, and together with them and Gaynor, they truly became Ghostbusters and claimed to have investigated some 500 haunted locations in Los Angeles.
Okay.
One of these became known as the Hollymont Drive haunting. This was a house at 6221 Hollymont Drive in Hollywood in 1976. This was a 3-story house that had a ton of your typical weird haunted house stuff was happening. But the most notable thing, this is like Nightmare Before Christmas sort of thing. The most notable thing I read that happened in there was a person was being chased by a cabbage with a butcher knife stuck in it.
It was Jim Henson's house?
There was also a band playing. There were so many things. Nothing particularly notable came of this. It was just like this flew. And then I was reading through the list of things they observed.
Yeah.
And a cabbage with a butcher knife stuck in it was by far the highlight there.
I'm more scared of the cabbage than the knife.
Oh no!
What if it gets in my mouth?
Vitamin D! They even brought KTTV to film stuff in the house on May 14th, 1976, a la Ghost Watch.
Yeah.
But the most famous and freakiest haunted investigation, and this was what I was...
Woke up in the middle of the night, sweating.
Yes,
yeah.
This is what freaked me out on several nights of doing this research. The freakiest haunted investigation they were a part of centered around a woman named Doris Bither.
Okay.
Do you remember me telling you about this or no?
I remember you telling me about this. I just don't remember what the story was.
You will.
Okay.
You do. You know it by another name.
Okay.
She was in her 30s with 3 sons and 1 daughter from 4 different fathers with no current man in the picture. She was an alcoholic. She had severe emotional problems and a past of abusive boyfriends and a rough childhood. Things had not been easy for Doris Bither, but it was the early 70s, so she was still able to buy a house in Culver City.
Okay.
In August 1974, she moved into 11547 Braddock Drive, and from the start, things were weird in this house.
Okay.
Shortly after moving in, an old woman knocked on her door and told her, "You need to get out." "I used to live here in this old house back when it was just a farm and I was a little girl. There is something very evil here. This place is haunted and you need to get out." Who would listen to this? So she stayed there, and sure enough, things started getting weird. It started with your typical haunted house stuff again. Cabbage with a butcher knife stuck in it.
Boring.
Oh, yawn.
Yeah.
I don't even jump out of bed for that. I don't even burn sage for that.
The cabbage tires itself out so fast. It's not like a head of lettuce with a knife. That can go all night.
If there was like an eggplant with a knife in it, I'd move. There's, banging on walls. Things were moving. Lights were flickering. Even family and friends who visited later said that they got very weird vibes from the place.
Yeah.
Then it moved on to sleep paralysis. And after that, things started getting physical.
Okay.
The children started being physically attacked. They'd be pushed and shoved and sometimes bitten and scratched by something unseen.
Okay.
One of the sons even almost had his arm broken. They started to gather that there seemed to be 4 distinct ghosts that were wreaking havoc in this house.
Okay.
One was just a harmless old man who the kids started calling Mr. Who's It, which I think is
pretty cute.
Cute and scary.
Yeah.
Who they believed was actually Doris's recently dead father. So they were like, okay, he can stay. But the other 3 were not so nice. Doris started getting physically attacked and claimed that 2 of the ghosts would hold her down while the 3rd would sexually assault her.
Jesus.
A very weird situation, and something had to be done, but what do you do in that situation? By chance, Doris was in a bookstore by UCLA where Taff and Gaynor happened to be either giving a lecture or were just talking to people about haunted houses that they were investigating, and Doris went up to them and explained her situation and showed them she had welts and teeth marks on her body.
Jesus.
They eagerly took the case and invited her into Moss's paranormal lab where they analyzed her with Kirlian photography. They then took the investigation to the house itself where Taff and Gaynor spent 10 weeks trying to figure out what is going on here. During this time, they saw a metal sheet fly off the cupboard. They saw balls of light flying past them. One time they heard a voice whisper to them, "Kiss me, kill me," and then a flower pot shot at them.
Jesus.
But the big event happened one night. There was a large crew. I think there was like a dozen people in the house to help with the investigation this night. Nothing was appearing, so they had Doris. They all were in her bedroom.
Yeah.
They had Doris yell and scream at the ghosts to show themselves. And after she did this, in the corner of the room, a smoky lime greenish figure started to appear.
Oh my God.
It was just the torso of a very muscular human-like body, but with no arms and no face. People started taking pictures, and after 15 seconds, it exploded into mist and was gone. Of course, the only thing that showed up in the pictures were some orbs, and in some of them there was like a sheet of white fuzz where the figure was. But this thing started being referred to as the entity. Now you know
Never
what
like that.
Now you know what I'm.
I
Do know what I'm
I
talking
do know
about
what you're talking
now,
about, yeah.
which is a name you know because in 1978 Frank de Filita wrote a book about this, and in 1982 they made a movie about it, which Thelma Loss hated because of the way it sensationalized the story.
Sure.
So this is the house from the entity. This is the story of it. Now, what exactly was going on in the Bither household, we really do not know.
Yeah.
Was this something paranormal? Was this something much more human and much more sad? We don't know. But after this investigation, Doris Bither moved to Texas, where she claimed to be pregnant with the child of the entity. What this turned out to be was an ectopic pregnancy, I don't really, Melissa explained it to me. It's like when the egg is fertilized outside of the fetus or something. So it ends in like, it's like a miscarriage. Like it was, she had, something had happened, like whether or not, we don't know. So she moved to Texas. She claimed that the ghost followed her there. She eventually moved back to California, but died sometime in 1999.
Wow.
We do not know what was going on there, but it was stories like this that the Thelma Moss Parapsychology Lab was involved with, and the attention they got that led UCLA to closing the lab in 1978 and firing Thelma Moss.
Jeez.
Thelma Moss continued her research even after the firing until she died on February 1st, 1997. And I have no other way to wrap up these stories from UCLA other than to say, remember how the first story I told you was about some potatoes growing on a tree? It really got upsetting. So enjoy. I hope you all have a spouse to wake you up when you're hyperventilating tonight.
God.
And also, like we've talked about some upsetting stuff today. We just want to remind people that the suicide hotline, you can just call 988. Help us out there if you need it, because there's we don't want that.
No,
we don't want that happening too. Yeah, the Entity House was a story I've considered many times, but I knew the nature of it, of the haunting, and it was something I was like, I don't want to even touch that. But I wanted to stay away from it, but that it was part of the Thelma Moss, the Thelma Moss lab. I couldn't not talk about it.
No, and that's a big part of it too, especially if it's the end of her career at UCLA.
So many factors, but the fact that that this book came out.
God, I'm kind of very curious to read their books because the auras sound incredibly interesting.
It's interesting. I feel like we end all of these episodes with, I don't believe any of this actually happened, but it's still freaking me out. To coin a phrase, I want to believe.
I want to believe. And a story about another disgraced person in the bowels of an institution. I feel like the entity, the whole story with that and then the lady in San Pedro are so similar to each other.
What is that house that that we covered in
the San Pedro episode?
Right.
I forgot her name, but basically haunting. There was an investigation team. They recognized that it was very haunted. She moved and the kind of ghost followed her. Yeah.
But they made a point in a lot of these stories to point out she had a lot of issues going on in her life. So I don't know what was happening.
Yeah.
If this wasn't something paranormal, why didn't they call the cops?
Sure, but it's not just one person saying, "Oh, this is happening to me," and everyone
kids were
believing
saying it, but
her.
yeah,
But like,
no,
didn't she
it's
have like
weird.
investigation teams go over and also
For 10 weeks,
for
they
10
were
weeks
watching
and
what was
identify
going on.
things?
I don't know.
I
have no idea, but let's go there right now. Knock on the door. I heard a story about this old house. Move.
I demand that you let me in.
Trick or treat.